So my name is Martin Henk, and I'm one of the founders of Pipedrive. And we heard about sales just now. And what do you know? We make sales software. You might have seen our logo if you like coffee, but we're not actually producing coffee. So it just kind of fits our internal slogan that is coffee is for closers only. So I'm one of the founders. I'm VP of product. I'm now residing in Lisbon. And I'm going to talk about fireballs and also scaling agile teams. So Pipedrive has grown a lot in terms of headcount. And when I went into the product organization a little more than 3 years ago, there were only a handful of people. And we started with questions like, well, what is a product manager anyway? And now we have a group of more than 30 people, of product managers, designers, researchers, and we have more than a dozen product teams shipping product in parallel. And we learned a couple of things during these years, and I'm going to share some of these learnings with you, and also talk about fireballs. So some of these learnings have been very personal, like how to be less of an asshole. So when I moved back to Tallinn and took over the product manager position, I had to tune back my enthusiasm a little bit. So I still remember the faces of the designers that had to witness me and some other product managers just screaming at each other. Our faces all red, really eager to shout over each other. Now looking back, probably some trivial issues, but seemed really important at that time. I was really lucky to have a team that never held back. Whenever I was acting as an asshole, they told me. So I was able to kind of reflect on that and hopefully also improve. Some of the other lessons were more organizational. So when we told our advisor, Ott, that we want to split the company and move some of the product-minded founders to Silicon Valley, he said, "You guys are idiots." We were like, yeah, maybe, but we still want to do that. So he said, you need to get your stuff in order in Tallinn before you move away. And the solution is to hire this guy called Sergey that looks exactly like Jason Statham. He doesn't take any bullshit, and he will fix your stuff. So we did. It was a really tough hire, but we were able to get Sergey on board. And he came in. And indeed, he filled everyone's calendars with these Scrum ceremonies. Funny-sounding events like grooming and retro, and other like good events like that. And we thought we were doing agile before. But really, OK, yeah, we were shipping early and often, but that was really the only agile thing about our process, or lack of it. The rest of it really was a big mess. So Sergey came in, and he fixed that. He got everyone to do proper Scrum sprints and all that. And since we only had one team at a time, it went rather smoothly. But the other end of shipping product, this product management end, that took a little longer. So we worked really closely together with engineering, mostly using these retrospective meetings to get feedback from the developers, to learn what to do better. So the processes became more and more efficient over time. We also had to learn how to not be a bottleneck, because in the early days, the founders would just walk around the room and tell developers what to do individually. That worked for a while, but became messy pretty quickly. So this understanding that you might not know everything, it took time to understand that. So me, coming from 3 years of running support, I had spoken to thousands of customers, so I had a pretty good idea of what their problems were. What my problem was that I couldn't understand that this understanding doesn't directly translate into having the best solution all of the time. So I had to get used to this fact that we have people now where they're specialists and they can come up with better solutions. So one of the situations that really made it clear to me was last summer when we did our first design sprint. So for those of you that don't know, it's a concept that the fine folks at Google Ventures came up with and put into a book and a framework. It's a process of testing any product idea within 5 days. And we had this big problem in the product that many people inside the company understood the problem quite well, but we just couldn't come up with a solution that everyone agreed. So we spent weeks and weeks just coming together and arguing and discussing and brainstorming, and it didn't go anywhere. So we decided to do a design sprint. And a really important concept inside the design sprint is that everyone is doing work individually in silence. Everyone is drawing mock-ups and wireframes. And then these are like put on the walls, like somewhat like in a museum. But unlike the museum, you don't sign your work. So all of the works are anonymous, and then people walk out around the room and vote on these concepts in silence. So you're not allowed to advocate for your solution vocally. And that's what I'm good at. I'm just like very vocal about my stuff, and oftentimes I win. But in this situation, I couldn't do that, and what do you know? None of my mock-ups got any votes, which was really painful, but also a very necessary experience, because we had hired all of these brilliant people to be product designers, product managers, researchers. Obviously, they were doing a much better job at coming up with solutions than I was. So to understand that and not be a bottleneck and not try to be in on every decision and like hold anything back or like constantly argue, that was a really good lesson to learn. Another lesson that we learned was that time zones are a big hassle. Like, I hate time zones. So if any of you have developed anything time management related, you all know the pain. But time zones are also a hassle when you're managing people. So 3 years ago, when we got the Scrum stuff worked out in Tallinn, we thought that we could run all of it from California. So the product-minded founders being in California, the rest of the product team being in Estonia, time difference is 10 hours. And we hoped we would make it happen. Turns out we were wrong. It was horrible. No matter how much coffee you have, a 6 a.m. meeting is never going to be very efficient. And on the other hand, like people doing 10 p.m. calls in Estonia wasn't nice either. So it wasn't working. It was really inefficient. Like every time we got something back from Tallinn, we had already changed our minds and I told them, like, okay, you need to do something different. So yeah, it was awful. So I moved back to Tallinn, realized that we could get stuff done in 2 days that normally would take more than 2 weeks. So I decided to stay. And in the long run, we actually ended up closing down our San Francisco office altogether and moved it to New York. 7-hour time difference is still a time difference, but at least there's an overlap. Kind of a crazy thing for a SaaS company to do, to close down your Silicon Valley office, but we did it. We're happy with that choice. It's working much better now. So most of the problems that we have encountered during this scaling phase have had solutions. So you have a problem, you read something online, you fix it, you put in a lot of effort, and there's usually a solution, and then you go forward and you meet the next problem. But there's this one problem that has come up all the time, and we haven't, until now, really found a solution over the years. And that's how to get the product vision out of the brain of the founders. And we've tried many things. We've written down the product vision many times. And that's kind of like a tricky thing to talk about, because one of the product-minded founders actually has had several brain surgeries during this time. But I promise it has nothing to do with getting to the product vision. So what exactly is the problem? The problem is that we have now more than a dozen product teams all working in parallel. Each of these teams has their own topic, their area in the product that they are responsible for, and they learn more and more about that area. And they become more and more independent. So they know more about reporting, for example, than I ever will, or email, or time management, or mobile. You get the point. So our designers and product managers are talking so much more to the customers. They're like making calls, they're visiting there in the office doing job shadowing, they are drawing all of these graphs. So the designers are spending so much more time today talking to customers and drawing these diagrams and building these crazy-looking contraptions on the walls of the office with like red thread. It kind of looks like, yeah, I don't want to say how it looks like, but it's pretty amazing, really. So they learn more and more about the customers, and we should enable them to make these decisions. So like what to work on next, and what is the best thing to do now. So how do you make sure that it all doesn't end up in a mess if you have a dozen teams working in parallel and making their own decisions? Because honestly, a couple of years ago, when I started reading about these independent product teams in bigger companies, I thought they were out of their minds. I mean, they either didn't know at all what they were doing, or they didn't have enough product-minded founders to take care of everything. It's like, honestly, like, how do you make sure that people don't just build a big bunch of loosely coupled features that don't combine into a nice product? I mean, like, it's so easy to mess up the product. Each team is like reinventing the wheel, or like everyone is going off in some strange direction, and like a couple of months later, you don't even recognize your own product anymore. So made me really scared, like how to fix that. And it turns out that the solution for us was fireballs. That's right. So we at Pipedrive are now using fireballs to communicate the product vision to the entire company, so that all of the product teams can be independent and make their own decisions, while at the same time making sure that everyone is still like moving towards the same goal and building the same product. I guess I should kind of explain it a little more, right? Okay. So a while back, marketing came to product and said they have this idea. They felt that we needed some framework that we could use together, like between marketing and product, so that we could build and also communicate the product based on the same framework, to be on the same page, or to use their own words, to sniff the same glue. So we were obviously very excited about that, and we decided to use jobs to be done. Turns out there's many jobs to be done out there. So we picked one, the one that is represented by Alan Clement and Derek White, and we ended up doing a couple of workshops with them. And we really liked jobs to be done, but this word, jobs to be done, was holding us back. So the concept is sane, but anytime someone hears that word or that term, jobs to be done, even if they haven't read any of the books, they will immediately get some kind of an idea in their heads of what that means. And in the end, and it was even worse if they had read any of the other books, then you would just end up with this like endless loop of discussing semantics and not actually making any progress. So we decided to rename jobs to be done and to call it, like, basing it on the same book and the same concept. And we saw a picture that Alan was using to kind of talk about this concept of progress. And it's a picture of a middle-aged plumber that is killing turtles. And every once in a while, that plumber gets in contact with a flower that gives him the ability to throw fireballs, which makes killing turtles so much easier. Makes sense, right? So if you didn't spend way too much time playing on the Nintendo when you were growing up, then it's a reference to this like quite well-known video game. And we really liked that concept. And for us, it made sense and kind of illustrated the concept of making progress. So we renamed our concept Fireballs, and we decided to take the product vision and describe it through the ideal salesperson. So we came together with a group of people, and we went through everything an ideal salesperson is when they are completely perfect. And we put it all together into this framework that we called Fireballs, and we decided to call these traits powers. We also considered skills and habits, But we went with powers because a power is something that can be taken away. Think of it like a bicycle, for example. If a person normally is slow and they are given a bicycle, then they become much more faster. If the bicycle is taken away, the person is slow again. And the same thing with a sales tool, for example. If a salesperson gets a really good sales tool, they might become the best organized person in the world. Take the tool away, that organizational skill also probably goes away. So therefore, powers. So why is that approach better? And isn't that just a fancy word for personas? So we had seen that it's possible to write down the product vision and make it really engaging and simple to understand. But when making everyday decisions, these product visions were so vague and so general that it wasn't really useful. We also tried writing down a very detailed product description. And it might have been useful, but most of these descriptions were so long that no one ever wanted to read them or remember any of that, so it wasn't really useful. So all of these attempts ended up not being used. And personas. I mean, yes, you can call them personas, but unlike personas, we're not interested in the age or gender or job title or geographic location. All we are interested in is the end result of that person. If that person is using our tool and making progress, what will the end result look like? And we can use these descriptions that can be very specific. For example, a perfect salesperson always has the next step scheduled and never forgets about any commitment that they have with a contact. So that's specific, but it doesn't describe what the solution is. So the product teams can take that description or that power, and they can come up with their own solution. And that solution can also change over time. Today, that might be a calendar tool. In a year from now, it's probably some sort of an AI that is organizing the calendar behind the scenes. Who knows? What matters is that they have this concept that's more easily memorable, and they can use that to make decisions every day, and they all have a clear path forward. And we have taken each of these powers and produced these illustrations and descriptions that go through everything that we know about the perfect salesperson and how that person should be like. And we have produced these illustrations and are putting these into a book. We have the first booklet ready, and we're distributing that in the offices right now. So every person working at Pipedrive can go through this book. And I have 2 small kids, and I know from experience that if you want to get anyone to read something, the best way to do that is to give them a comic book. So this booklet right now is pretty close to it. We will keep working on it, obviously, to make it even more readable, even more memorable. We will keep producing posters and other things that we can hang in the office so that people are always engaged with the product vision. They can more easily remember. Also using as many kind of like human pictures as possible, and making this entire process of really detailed product description very humane, because it's not describing the product itself, but it's describing the ideal salesperson end result. Some people might be able to be like that without the help of a tool. I'm certain that there are some salespeople in the world that have all of that without any help of a tool. Most people need some help in at least some areas. So that's how it looks like. This booklet, that's the first step on the road to having this like unified product vision in front of everyone's eyes. And yeah, we keep going. And I truly believe that that's the solution to having dozens of product teams working in parallel, being as independent as possible, while at the same time maintaining this unified product vision, going in the same direction, and building that same tool. Thank you. So there's an opportunity to take questions, I see. So someone is asking, was it marketing or product that pushed more for jobs to be done over personas? So it was definitely marketing that wanted to sniff the same glue, but jobs to be done seemed like the best solution. Marketing is actually also using personas, so it's not like we're somehow against personas. It's just jobs to be done seemed like a really good framework that both of us could use. So the product organization can use jobs to be done to communicate the product vision and then really use that for building products, while at the same time, marketing can easily use that to communicate the product, to come up with messaging for the website and everything else. So for once, it was actually something that we all nicely agreed on. So it wasn't one or the other. It was an agreement. So another question is, how did you apply Clements' ideas into practice? The concept of progress is great, but the book's ideas around struggle, pull, push, etc. look complex. Indeed. So after our first workshop that took 5 days and 25 customer interviews, we had identified 3 main jobs, and the end result was great in terms of communicating the product to our customers. Taking these end results and these jobs and communicating based on that. But then the product team was kind of like, now what? So we have these jobs, yeah, get organized and scale and improve and all that, but it wasn't specific enough to actually be used when making product decisions. So we did another workshop with them. They came to Tallinn this time, and we tried to do kind of feature mapping, taking these jobs and mapping features to these jobs and to get more specific. And the end result was better, still not there. So we did another workshop, this time without them, but we gathered together founders, marketers, designers, and product managers. And we spent 5 days again plastering about 1,000 Post-it notes on the walls and gathering together and going through this pretty painful process. And then when we came out with the fireballs, the powers, then that actually became much more actionable, where you have these slightly more specific powers that you can map to features, and then you can also say which powers Pipedrive kind of helps you with and which powers we're not helping at all. And you can also see that, yeah, we're not really doing that much in many of the areas. There are some things that Pipedrive is really good for, but other areas are kind of lacking in terms of helping people develop these powers. So that's when Fireballs was born. Going through this process long enough and becoming more specific and including more and more product people until it actually became actionable. So it doesn't do the job for you, but now with the booklets and the information and the posters that are coming, I believe that the product organization is much better equipped making these decisions based on that framework. So the next question is the product vision document available externally? It's not. I'm not sharing it. I didn't include much of it in the talk either. I'm sorry. That's based on so much work that we have done, and I'm considering that our kind of IP. So yeah, we're not sharing it externally. It's internal only, but it is really interesting, indeed. I'm sorry. So go through your own process. I mean, unless you're a direct competitor, you wouldn't really you couldn't really use that. But then again, there are a lot of direct competitors out there. So yeah, we're not eager to share that document externally. So another question about competitors is how do you deal with new competitors, products and features? Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, we hate them, ignore them, cry in the corner. I don't know. It's we usually are pretty good at ignoring our competitors. We have our own vision. It's clearer now than ever using that same framework. We keep building our own stuff and worrying about our own stuff. There were 200 competitors when Pipedrive started 7 years ago. Everyone said that we're totally stupid to start another CRM company. Who needs another one? there are like even more competitors today. Like, yeah, what can you do? That's life. But yeah, we're not worrying too much about it. So I'm running out of time. The thing is blinking red. So thank you again, and see you around.